There are so many moments in life that we find ourselves feeling stuck. I shared today on the podcast how last night I felt so overwhelmed. I wanted to dig a hole and put my head into the hole because I was drowning in that moment. And we're going to share what I did to get unstuck and how I am now helping clients do the same in their own lives. Oftentimes as entrepreneurs and leaders and also leaders of our household, we get so stuck in the logistics of life. But when we can actually get to the core of what's happening, we can reduce our overwhelm by 50%, which is exactly what I'm getting to help people do right now. We often say you don't need better intentions, you need better tools. I'm working with very high-performing, incredible leaders in their industries, actually be able to get back in control of their life, to have confidence and energy in what they are experiencing. And we want you to experience the same. So welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open the emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in our relationships and in ourselves. I am your host, Tierra Wages, and joining me is marriage and family therapist, clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his incredible wife, Phyllis. Together, they have founded the Connection Codes, the guide to human connection. And we're so glad you're here.
Hello, world.
Hi, friends. So it's always fun to be back in the studio and to be recording podcasts. And we talk a lot about this, like words, definitions. Where we live, it's a common word, overwhelm.
Yeah.
But when we talk about emotion, often we say that overwhelm is not a core emotion. And so I think for all of us, it's a personal word. Like my version of overwhelm might be very different than your version. And it's interesting because I think we can judge each other's overwhelm. Like you might list the things that you were overwhelmed about, and I might judge going either, well, that's no reason to be overwhelmed, or I might, think, oh my word, I would never even attempt that. So it's easy for us to judge that word or to misunderstand it and immediately interpret it the way it is for us. So why don't we just start there and even just share. I love, what we're doing with the coaching and the overwhelm, but maybe you could give a little more even defining of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that is where the word kind of gets messy because we use it as a society a lot. I think it's the new busy. Where we're like, oh, I'm so busy. And then the whole campaign came out like, busy's not good. Busy is not a bragging point. And so now we've kind of been like, well, I'm so overwhelmed. And we all feel a certain level. I shouldn't say all, but many of us would say, yes, I am feeling overwhelmed. That's a word that we could use to describe our lives. And something that I have found is that we often associate the word overwhelmed with our task list. Like, I have to be here at this time. I have to do this task. I need to, get ready for this speaking event. I have all of these things I need to do. But I have found that what is actually creating the higher level of overwhelm is when our brains are flooded with emotion. I think that is what actually sends us into the level of I am frozen and I am feeling very overwhelmed, like to the point that it's hard to even function. It's hard to know what to do next. It's actually the emotion that is creating that feeling in your body. And so I've even been navigating this for myself recently and doing this coaching program and helping people through it. I'm recognizing within myself, okay, I am logistically, I have a lot on my plate every single day, but I am emotionally great. Like, not to say I don't get hit with pain, not to say I don't get hit with fear and all of these things, but I don't get frozen very often and become reactive in those moments. And so for me, it's really distinguishing between those two things, and that the root cause of our overwhelm is actually the emotion behind it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, which I think is the reason that so much of the research indicates that people are operating at about a third of their capacity, which is really startling to think that you're paying this person X salary. And I'm not fussing at people. I'm not saying you just yell at them at all. Actually, the opposite. But they're getting paid a full salary and they're generating, and nobody operates at 100%. There's no such thing. Nobody's perfect, but that they're operating at about a third of what they're capable of. And again, the goal is not to yell at them and say, do better, but to figure out what is blocking them. And the vast majority of the time, it's unprocessed emotions. Because and it's just a human condition. This is how humans function, like it or not. And when the limbic system is flooded, the cortexes don't engage effectively, efficiently, proficiently, and we're lesser versions of ourselves. I say we're dumber versions of ourselves, not because we're dumb, but because we're flooded. And that's true for every human on the planet. This is not a weird thing. This isn't a Tira issue. It's like, oh, well, Tira, you're one of those. No, this is human. And we have to help people process through emotion. And again, the research, and it's just the last few years that we've begun researching this to even consider that, oh, that makes a difference. But you think about it, whatever the situation is, guy leaves home. He has a big fight with his wife that morning. His kids are yelling at him. He's yelling at them. And he's overwhelmed. He gets to work at 8:05.
Yeah.
I don't know. How well is he going to do the first 10 minutes, 20 minutes, first hour? And based on the research, it's 10, 10:30, 11 before he even gets in gear.
Yes.
Wow.
And now it's lunchtime.
Yes.
And so he goes to lunch. His wife calls him. They fight some on the phone. Then he gets back to the office at 1 and spends another hour or two in turmoil about this. Not because he's a bad person, it's because he's human. And this is true for male, female, anybody. It's always true. And if we don't help people process through the emotions, they're going to be lesser versions of themselves and they're less productive. It's just what happens.
Yeah, I love that that's the specific example that you gave. That's what I wanted to share as well, because that's what I'm seeing. We talk a lot about work-life balance in the entrepreneurial and leader space of like work-life balance. But when I'm hearing people talk about that, they're talking about balancing your work with your life. So you're coming home and you're like, oh, I'm so stressed from work. And that work is dysregulating your family. Like you're intense from your job. So now you and your wife are struggling. But we do not talk about the life work balance and how what we're experiencing at home is then affecting how we're showing up in our day. That is completely overlooked by entrepreneurs and by, business coaches and leaders. They're like, come in, do the task, and then balance it when you get home. There's no support helping their team actually show up as better versions of themselves because they're not dysregulated from what happened the night before. And that's something that I'm really helping my clients recognize and see, that there's one in particular, and they're doing such a great job, and it's clicking for them. They're starting to see that where they're like, okay, my biggest dysregulator is when I'm in conflict with my partner. I cannot focus at work. So then what's end up happening is they can't focus all day. And then they know they have things to get done. So then they need to stay late to get those things done. Well, now they're getting home late. So they're disconnected with their partner. And then the cycle continues again tomorrow. And that is the cycle that I've been there. We can very easily get trapped in that. And I remember it's probably been 2-ish years now, Wes and I, one of the last conflicts that we had, we got into an argument the night before, and the next day we're still in conflict with each other. And he came down at about 3:00. He was like, I have not gotten a single thing done today.
Well,
like I've done nothing. And I'm like, yeah, this is what the rest of the world experiences.
So he was operating at a 0% capacity.
He was operating at a 0% capacity.
Way to go, dude.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
And it's because we were in conflict with each other. Or I noticed that if I don't drop kids off at daycare anymore. If I drop a kid off at their preschool program and they're crying when it's time to leave, and now I have to just go to the office and pretend like I didn't just leave my kid kicking and screaming and crying before I walked in the door, the amount of guilt and sad and fear that I have, I'm like, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
That is mentally overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so what I have really found is that when we can connect at home and get those wins at home, man, the things that we can do, how far we can excel, and how much of it is actually wrapped up in the emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me make it abundantly clear. Wes is amazing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, incredibly gifted, talented, brilliant. So it's not that he was operating in such a low capacity because he's a moron, quite the opposite. But in that moment, when he's at odds with his partner, if I came to your workplace and stood behind you all day long, talked to you, fussed at you, whatever, sang songs to you, you would be so distracted and so annoyed by the end of the day, you would be so unproductive. And it's not because of you, it's because of what's happening behind you. Well, that's exactly what's happening with unprocessed emotion. We reference it as rumination. You're just constantly ruminating internally, not on purpose. You're not trying to do that. It's not because you're an idiot. It's not because you're stupid. It's because you're human. And we constantly try to help people to get over that. Well, sometimes you have to. I get it. But we want to go backwards to the beginning, to the source of it, the cause of it, not just treat the effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I have found myself, last night was a moment where it all just kind of hit me at one time. And it is not often that I feel emotionally overwhelmed anymore. Logistically, I am balancing continuously, but I'm like, I mentioned on a podcast recently, on Mondays, I do a check-in with my, business coach. And I'm like, what was your stress level? I'm like, well, I don't feel stressed. I feel lonely and I feel sad and I feel hurt. And it's because I can process those things. I really don't feel that stress very often. I don't get disconnected from myself, where last night, everything just came crashing down at one time. And I walked out of my kid's bedroom and I realized, oh my gosh, we recorded a podcast, Wes and I, Friday night, and I was editing it to come out today. And I spent the majority of the day editing that podcast. Well, I got to the end of that edit and realized, truthfully, we were really vulnerable on that episode and we're going to re-record it. We wanted to do an episode about our early journey of the connection codes and what that really looked like, the really hard, sticky parts of it. And we were vulnerable in sharing an experience that we had together. And then I got to the end and realized we were too vulnerable. Like, I actually don't feel safe, not with our core audience that listens, but with other people that don't know us that could listen and could judge, one of our characters about a situation that had happened. And so I decided I actually can't post this. I'm not going to post this. I need to protect our family. And so then it's now 9 p.m. and I don't have the podcast ready to go. And I have all of these, we're releasing certified coaching. We have all these things. And I walked out of my daughter's bedroom and I looked at Wes and I said, if I could go dig a hole in the front yard and put my head into it, I would right now. Like, that is how I was feeling.
Wow.
And so he sat down, like, he immediately slowed down. He worked until 1 a.m. last night doing his own stuff. And he slowed down with me. He sat down with me. I was like, what needs to happen? Like, what do you need? Like, what's happening for you? And I was just like, I feel this and I feel this and I feel this. And he oohed me through it.
Wow.
But then also was like, okay, what do you need? And I was like, okay, I need to release something. I've been too consistent for the last 2 years to miss a date. I can't not release something tomorrow. And he was like, okay, well, what can that look like? And so he was like, why don't you pull out an older episode, something that you recorded a year and a half ago, re-release it. People do that all the time, Tira. Like, that's something that podcasters do. I mean, that's how we grew up watching episodes. We'd watch 3 runs, And so I was like, okay. And I slowed myself down and that's what I did. And do I feel guilt about that? Yeah, I feel guilt about it. But I processed that guilt. I connected with my partner. I felt safe with someone.
Wow.
And I was able to get the things out of my body to get unstuck. And while that did not necessarily cure all of the logistics on my list, I was able to stay connected to myself.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that's where a lot of people miss. They're sitting down at their desk on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, and they're disconnected from themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where the feeling of overwhelm
Yeah,
happens.
and that's one of the reasons that I don't pathologize humans. One of the reasons I think the DSM is in its fifth and I hope final edition, because we label people. We say, oh, well, she's blank, whatever. You fill in the blank. And to realize that this is not a condition, this is not a label that we're putting on somebody. This is actually what they're experiencing in the moment, because the reality is, pick a number, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years from now, Tira's going to experience that again. Okay. That doesn't mean we have to label her and say, hi, my name's Tira and I'm a blank. I'm messed up. No, that's just a process that's happening. And we're not going to fix you. We're not going to cure you. We're not going to heal you. This is this is the process of life. We don't do that with a 12-month-old. We don't walk in and say, okay, you're sad. We want to cure this sadness. We want to fix this sadness permanently because we love you. You're 12 months old. You're a baby. We don't want you to be sad ever again. So we're going to fix your sadness. That's not true. That's not even possible. So the baby's going to be sad X number of times today. That's what's amazing. This isn't a once a year thing. So the baby's sad 7 times a day. Yeah. We'll just process through each of those sadnesses and we'll do it again tomorrow. And the next day, well, there's no birthday. We're like, okay, now you're 5. No more of that. What about 10? No. What about 20, 30? And unfortunately, that's what we do with our kids is we tell them to get fixed, to stop it, stop being sad. And by the time they're early teens, they have some independence and they just move away from us. And then that's when we end up sitting with people that go, my kids won't connect with me anymore. That's because you've been pushing them away. You've been pushing them down for a decade. They finally got the message and they're going to go find somebody who's safe for them. So again, that's the process. It's not something we're going to fix Tira once and for all.
Yeah.
No, something else is going to happen tomorrow, the next day, next week, next month. And that's fine. This is how we navigate. This is how we actually end up functional.
So let's break down what happened for you last night. Because it was logistical in the sense that, which is fascinating because we have someone who edits our podcasts.
Yes.
And yet you didn't get that one to him in time. And so you ended up editing, which may have really been a blessing because you heard it again, which then made you go, ooh, I don't feel safe in this.
Yeah.
Which that decision was you were honoring your body. You were tuning into your body.
Yeah.
And can you describe at what moment you were like, oh, I don't, because, y'all recorded it. I mean, you talked about it openly in the recording of it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until you heard it back.
Yeah.
So in that moment, what were you experiencing? What was happening for you in that moment?
Yeah. In that moment, I was hit with fear.
Okay.
Because Wes is currently working to become a commercial airline pilot. And that world is very, very, very strict in how you show up with your mental health and your physical health. Like we have been told by other people, don't even say if you're taking a Motrin. Like you have to hide, which is actually terrifying that pilots have to hide everything about them. And Wes is one of the most mental and emotionally, physically healthy people at this point. And going back and sharing an old story of a moment that we were in a lot of deep pain, I remembered how people attacked us last year and they pulled out one clip of something that was said on a podcast and then tried to destroy our character.
Yeah.
And I, as soon as I got to the end, it hit me like I envisioned someone pulling that one clip out and trying to destroy our character. And I felt a lot of fear in that moment. And then I felt really sad because that's also why we can't be vulnerable with each other. Like we hide parts of our lives and then we feel isolated and lonely because I know we have listeners that are where we were 2 years ago. I know that. And I wish that I could share with them the things that the conversations and the moments that we had. So I feel sadness that we have to shield ourselves to protect ourselves. So I actually had a lot of emotions. I felt lonely. I felt shame that we were there. Yeah. So that's what happened with me in that moment of deciding not to release that episode. And it's actually such a fun episode. I had so much joy in making it. We were laughing. Like, it was a really fun one. But yeah, ultimately, I knew that I needed to protect us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that what I really want to point out is that you listened to the fear.
Yeah.
You listened to your body.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that. I, at times, for the sake of the other, like I think that I would have been in that situation and I would have, out of guilt,
Yeah.
said, no, we need to release this.
Wow.
And don't have fear. I would have denied the fear or told the fear, I would not have listened to the fear. I would have, out of guilt, it's almost like jump and hope for the best kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting that we've talked about this a couple of times lately, that as children, for many of us at a young age, we are taught to not trust our bodies. And this is not a bashing parents moment, but many of us as parents, us included, me included, would say, you need to finish all the food on your plate.
Yeah.
And the little body was saying, I'm full. And the parent was saying, no, you're not full. You have not eaten enough. I'm deciding that you've not eaten enough. And I was having this conversation with someone just saying, there's so many examples I think we could come up with. You used to say something you have a memory of with your dad, that you would be crying and he'd say, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Well, you were already crying for a reason.
Just as a hobby.
And
something I enjoy doing.
But it's kind of that message of don't trust your body. Don't you be crying right now.
Yeah.
I'm the one who determines what is worthy of tears. I've just started thinking about even little children who wiggle a lot, and you're like, stop wiggling, and it's like, but their body is wanting to wiggle.
Yeah.
Like their body needs to wiggle, shutting things down to the point where then I think we grow up as adults and we don't listen to our bodies. We don't know how to listen to our bodies. We don't tune in. And the overwhelm came after. Is that correct?
For me, it felt like I closed my kid's bedroom door and it was like I ran into a brick wall. Like it all hit at one time. Yeah, so it came after. I decided earlier in the day, this podcast doesn't feel safe. Like I don't know if I can. So then I came up last night, Wes was working, and I was like, hey, what do you think? Like, how do you feel about it? Should I just release it and then take it down? Let it be up for 24 hours so it's there and then remove it. And so I was just still processing and trying to not listen to the fear, still trying to come up with excuses to move forward.
Wow.
But then after putting the kids down and just feeling like I walked into a brick wall, it was just, whew, okay, nope, I've got to slow down. And Wes partnering with me is really what helped slow me down and find the correct solution, the solution that I felt most safe in. And it was honestly a very fast and simple solution, which was great for 10 p.m. But I couldn't have reached that point if I had not slowed down.
Yeah.
Right.
And accessed the emotion.
Listen to your body.
Yes.
Access the emotion.
Wow. Yes.
And, I think for a lot of people, we get stuck in overwhelm. It's like we really don't know what to do with it. And so it's almost like the way I picture it is your brain feels like it's going to explode. You just described it as hitting a brick wall, which is not movable. Like it just seems impossible. It seems a brick wall is impossible to move or to go through. And so, I think for a lot of people, they just live in a state of overwhelm.
Yeah.
And I love it that, the support, like having you turning to Wes last night is what clarified it. It's like it did open up the brick wall. It's like, oh, here is a way to hear what my body's telling me, to say what my body is telling me, and then to have someone go, okay, so what do you need? And then to come up with a solution that may not have been your favorite solution, but it very much was a solution. And so,
And the solution that my body needed.
yes.
I needed something that wasn't going to take me 3 hours to get to the other side of.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the strength and the power in it is tuning in, which is what you did. That's the message of fear was, I don't feel good about this. Obviously, you did when you recorded it. It was later. So that you tuned in, you listened, and then you were able to turn to someone who's safe for you and process that and get to the other side of that. And, I know with the coaching that you're doing specifically about overwhelm, kind of explain the benefits of that as far as working with people who are really stuck.
I want to interject real quickly because what your narrative just drips of connection codes, protocols. That actually might be fun to have people, like we could do some of these and have our coaches go through and, annotate that. I mean, you tune into your body, what's happening for me? Well, what am I missing? Like, oh, okay, there's a lot of fear. You're co-regulating with another human who's safe for you. He knows how to he knows how to get to the core, which is just amazing. You get to the fourth phrase, well, what do you need? You get to the need. And the fourth phrase, what do you need, is often logistical. Not always, but sometimes it is, because you have to actually figure out the logistics of it. So, and the reason that it drips to the connection codes protocols is because connection codes are based on the human condition. It's not that, Tira has just gone through this amazing training program, so she's now able to do this. No, this is already inside of her. We just called it out and said, hey, be the real human, be the authentic Tira, allow yourself to exist, allow yourself to be functional, slow down, slower is faster, connection codes protocol. And you did, and it's just amazing how effective that is. And the vast majority of people, we live here now, so we're just like, well, yeah, duh, this is how we roll. The vast majority of people don't, at least in this culture. That would have just I mean, if I heard you right, you said you wanted to, sorry to laugh at your pain, you wanted to dig all in the front yard and stick
Put my head in it. I did.
It's like, well, that makes perfect sense. But people live that way all the time. And the point, and I know you're maybe embellishing a little bit, but how ridiculous that, and what would that solve? So now Tira's in the front yard, she has her head in a hole in the dirt. So there we go. That solved the problem. Well, that doesn't solve anything. That's where most people live.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and that can be digging a hole in the front yard, or substance abuse, or outbursts of anger, smashing a hole in the wall. I mean, it's endless. Every human's unique, so different people handle things different ways. And then we don't get anywhere. And then you finish with that, treating the symptom. Well, you're still right exactly where you were before.
Right.
How long did that take from the time you closed your kid's bedroom door?
Oh, wow. Less than 10 minutes.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I mean, that just lights me up.
Yeah.
Because, all three of us sit with people that go for not just hours, days, weeks, months, where they're strangled by this. And for literally months or years even, they feel like digging a hole in the front yard and putting their head in it and just basically dying or disappearing or whatever. That's the reason the three of us and many other people are so passionate about this, because it actually gets it down to 10 minutes. Like, well, I can do that. Wait, what? You're going to deal with your overwhelm in 10 minutes? Yeah. That doesn't mean you won't need to do it again tomorrow, the next day, or next week. That's fine. You'll do it in 10 minutes then as well. And it's just so beautiful and so powerful. I love it. So I interrupted you because Phyllis had asked you about.
Well, no, that's great. Also to say that it also didn't mean the logistics changed.
Right.
Like, I still needed to get a podcast out. I still needed to get stuff ready to go for emails today. I still needed to get all of these logistical things, but I was back in my body, and I was back at a state of my brain being connected to itself, where I no longer feel like I needed to put my head into the dirt. And I also was able to listen to my body say, you need to get in the bed. I've been up until 1 a.m. for the last few nights. We got this room set up. We went to Columbus and I spoke, which a lot went into that, preparing to speak,
absolutely.
And And then driving the 6 hours there, 6 hours back. And so I've been going nonstop. And I was like, okay, here are the priorities to get done tonight. And my body needs to lay in the bed and watch one episode of Emily in Paris. It's a 30-minute episode and go to sleep. And it's very rare that Wes and I go to sleep at different times. We don't do that very often. But I was like, I need to tune into my body and what it needs. And so that is exactly what I'm helping our coaching clients walk through it. They're coming to me because it's usually either a logistical goal or an emotional goal that they're trying to reach of, I want to be more present in my body. I want more confidence. I want to excel at my job because right now I'm either snapping at my kids every day. I feel disconnected from my husband. I am unable, I'm frozen at work to know what to do next because my brain is not connected, or I'm sitting at work scrolling or distracted or doing all of these other things because I need to just tune everything else out. I'm so overwhelmed. I don't even know what I am supposed to do. And that's making me rigid. It's making me sick. And it's definitely holding me back from excelling in what I want. And so we start out by teaching the science. And so what I love about foundations is that's the most powerful tool for a couple. We have so many people who are like, I need to go deeper within myself. Like either my partner has this down and I'm just falling behind, or I don't even know where to begin for myself. And so I am walking them through applying the identity piece to themselves and applying the science of how it's showing up. What did they learn in their childhood about emotions? And we are getting really good at doing the wheel together. Sometimes I'll have someone go through and they'll name their hurt. And that hurt there are layers to that hurt that they can't see. And I'm like, okay, let's do a whole core emotion wheel just around that hurt. And then they realize like, oh, there was a lot. I said that like, oh, I'm hurt that my partner, I'll just give an example, yelled at me last night. Okay, what actually was happening for you in that moment? And they realized that moment that overwhelmed their brain and they didn't realize it emotionally. And so we are really diving in together of what's happening in their lives while also looking at what habits are you looking to create? How are you taking care of your body? Like, how are you eliminating pain points and joy points? All of these things. And then we go into group coaching where they are actually learning to use this tool with strangers because that's what we want.
Right.
We want you to be able to be with someone else, even someone you don't know, and be like, ooh, I'm feeling some guilt about this right now. That way, when you're in your office with your team or your coworkers or at home with your kids, you're able to actually say these things out loud to get them out of your body. And so some of the transformations that I've already seen with people is so incredible. And typically around the 4 to 6 week mark, they're like, oh, this is really, really hard. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But I'm able to look at them and see, you are where we were 2 years into this. You've made so much progress by working with someone. It took me and Wes 2 years to get here. And they're also going through foundations. They're getting all of these other tools. So it's a full life experience.
Wow.
And I'm reminding, if you can get this part, the dominoes will fall down. Like you'll see such a transformation take place. And that's what I've witnessed. I love business. I'm a business person. And so being able to help people show up and reach their goals while connected to their husband and their kids and their family and most like themselves, I'm obsessed.
Yeah. Well, we don't do a shout out for that very often, but we do business events where we go into a business and help them to implement the connection codes, and we get so much feedback. And business is about being productive, making money, and so many businesses are like, oh my gosh, our revenue has increased drastically, and all we've done is now we're using the connection codes. Well, that's because people are more productive. So now you're not paying them a full salary for a third of their productivity. And again, you're not going to get 100, but they're up to whatever, 70, 75, 80% of their capability. Yeah, that equals more money for everybody. Everybody wins. And all you did was allow the human to function as a human.
Well, and there's been a study done on this, I actually looked at it this week, that the average person, as you increase your emotional intelligence, that has a direct correlation with how much money you make. You average an extra $29,000 a year as you increase your emotional intelligence. So there is a direct link from being able to show up at work, processing and connected to your body, or if you're an entrepreneur, to your income. And so, it is an investment to do this. But the outcome, the outpouring that you can receive is so much higher. Yeah. So now I'm going to do the core emotion wheel. I'm going to show you how to use this tool that we have created and share what was happening with me.
Cool.
So, and it's actually hard for me to do this sometimes because I do it in real time. So then whenever it's time to do, I'm like, oh, I already processed. What did I process this morning with anger? Because I did.
I'm so sorry because I'm almost interrupting your wheel, but that is so true. Because when it is processed, it's processed. Again, that doesn't mean it won't happen again in 3 hours. And that's my goal. And I ask couples all the time when we're sitting with them, when they finish the wheel, I'll say, what percentage of what you just shared did he already know? And of course, our goal there is 100%. Or if you do it conversely, what percentage did he not already know? The goal there is 0%. And things happen. You're not always together. But I want Wes to know you. I want Wes to be so tuned into you that when you do the wheel with him, he's like, yeah, she shared that at 3:15 this afternoon. Oh yeah, she shared that at 12:30. And so it's not, and we all sit with people often that they do the wheel, and it's earth shattering for them because they've never done this in their memory. They probably did when they were 12 months old, but they don't have any memory of ever processing through. And so this is like overwhelming. Whereas the way we strive to live is that, the wheel is just review and we've already processed it. And there's a lot of times that we literally don't remember the memories. We don't remember the emotions, not because we're blocking them, but because they were processed. And so the pain that you experienced yesterday, you literally don't even remember it. You can sit down and think and remember it, but it was processed. And so it's gone. And so I've experienced that a lot with people where they're like, "Ooh, I've already processed everything up to date. So, I'll have to think this through." So that's such a great point.
I feel anger. I feel anger that we can't be vulnerable with each other, especially showing up online. And we want to be so bad. And we are. We do a really good job talking about a lot of things. But that there are people out there that will attack you and read between the lines. And so anger about that. I feel shame. I feel shame a lot about my phone because I'm really bad at communicating through text message, or I have my focus on pretty much all day. So I miss calls because my focus is on. Glenn, you have every right to think I ignore your call because you call me and I'm like, I promise I didn't see it till hours later because my focus was on. Yeah. So shame about that. I have guilt. I have guilt right now because Phyllis, I know you're in pain and we are sitting here together doing this podcast and I have so much guilt about that. I have fear. Fear over the logistics of some of the things I have on my plate right now. Just really, Wes is leaving town tomorrow. We're recording a lot this week, stuff for certified coaching. And so just fear and all of the moving parts while having 4 kids at home. Lonely, probably just loneliness in that, just not having my support person here to help navigate the logistics of what I need to get done. Sad. I feel sad. I feel sad in my body right now. I was getting myself ready this morning and I was just like looking at my wrinkles and looking at myself and I just felt really sad and insecure. And I don't need anybody to tell me not to feel that. Please don't tell me not to feel that. But I do want to process that because I do want people to know often when you're watching people online, you think I just wish I could be that confident. No, like I'm still having sadness in that. Wow. I'm hurt. I feel hurt, sharp pain. I think I just feel hurt last night over hitting that brick wall moment. That felt sharp of just everything coming at one time in me. And joy, I have several joys. I have joy. I spoke in Columbus this week, and it was just absolute. I loved speaking, being on stage and being able to share these tools and knowing what they've done and watching other people take notes and nod and like see it click for them. So much joy in that, joy in being with y'all, and joy in my getting to coach people. Actually walking people through this program that we have created and seeing them come on the screen where they start out the first couple of weeks crying before we get on, like just absolutely drowning, to a few weeks later where they're like, I processed with my husband last night for the first time and he was safe for me. And I'm like, hold on, we've got to slow down for this win. Like this is a big deal. And really just seeing the progress that people are making in really a short amount of time, like mind-blowing how different your life can be in 3 months. And so much joy in that. Yeah. And being with y'all. So thank you, Phyllis. Thank you for showing up today. Guys, she is the biggest trooper on our team. And I'm actually going to listen to what you have not said this because you push through things. I am canceling what you have this afternoon. We are not doing that anymore today. We need to listen to our bodies and tune in, and so protect each other. So thank you for being here. And to our listeners that show up every week, we see you. Like we have been where you are. The logistics may look different, but we have felt the emotions that you're feeling. And we are here to partner with you on this journey. And we don't want any of you to feel like you want to dig a hole in your front yard and put your head in it every single day. Like you don't have to feel that way every day. 10 minutes, I can manage feeling that for 10 minutes because I haven't felt it in a long time. And so if you want help getting unstuck, please, there's a link in the show notes where you can book a breakthrough call. And we will walk you through what is happening in your body and the steps you need to take and how to get support to get unstuck. Because we've talked about how it affects you financially, that there is literal data that shows that it can increase your income, but also the connection you can have, the safety you can find, you just can't even put money on it. It's what I feel today versus what I felt 3 years ago. We talked about the last episode, how I was drowning in pain. What I would pay to go from that to this right now. It's in like, I don't remember the right word, how to say it. There's not a price. Like it's invaluable. That's the way to say it.
Yeah.
So please click that link, book a call, and get unstuck. Don't stay where you are today. Yeah. And thank you for all of your reviews. If you have not left us a 5-star review, please leave us a 5-star review. It's so helpful.
I do have to throw this one thing in and I get what you're saying, but you said, we've been where they are. We are where they are. We just know what to do now. And we are just pilgrims on the journey. We look just like everybody else because I always feel fear that people think, oh, well, they've arrived. They got lucky or they won the lottery or something. No, we just know what to do. Yeah. And I had a grandson on our property the other day, and he was trying to cut down this tree, had a big root on it, and he couldn't find an axe. And so he had some sort of little hacksaw, not even the handle part, just the blade, and precious that he was putting in the effort. But I'm like, dude, you have the wrong tool. It's not that he doesn't have a tool, and he's sweating his guts out trying to cut this big root with this little tiny hacksaw blade. So it's not due to lack of effort. It's not due to lack of intention. And I asked him, I said, how long have you been working on this? I don't remember what he said. It was way too long. And I said, we got the wrong tool. And so we went and found the axe and like literally, I think it was 2 whacks of it and he cut right through it. He's like, yeah, that was a lot easier. Yeah. So it's not because we're better than anybody else. And it's not because you're worse than we are. It's not because you're stupid. Just got the wrong tools. And as long as you're using the wrong tools, I'm not saying you won't get something done, but you'll be exhausted and overwhelmed, back to that word, And we just want to get you the right tools. And we always say the connection codes are simple, not necessarily easy. They actually become easier.
Yeah.
Because
I
a
agree.
10-minute struggle, 5 years ago to say to Tira, that thing that took you like 3 days, whatever weeks to process through, could have taken 10 minutes. Tira would have been like, shut up. Don't you're just making fun of me. No, it's actually true.
Yeah.
You can process through these things in 10 minutes, sometimes 2 minutes, which blows my mind. And, I always say that. If you had told me that 30 years ago, I'd have been like, yeah, right. What am I, stupid or something? We just went through a 2-week painful, traumatic turmoil together, and it could have taken us 2 minutes. Yeah. We just didn't have the right tools.
Yeah.
And all of the wounding, all the trauma that we experienced because we just didn't know. It's not because we're stupid. Phyllis and I are brilliant people. We're very gifted, very talented, and dumb as bricks. And we look ridiculous whenever we don't have the right tools. And now we do. So
I am so glad that you said that, because I do think that is a huge point. We are still experiencing the same things that y'all are. I think that sometimes I do have fear when I'm coaching someone, because I think they look at my life, they think, well, you're not experiencing what all I'm experiencing. It's like, no. I have 4 young kids. I am actively married, and I am running a large business with very little teammates. I am absolutely where you are in that I have been abandoned by I have a list of things that logistically cause me a lot of pain, but I committed. And that's what Wes and I, the podcast I'm not releasing, we committed. We said, we're going to do this even in the beginning when it does get easier, but when it's hard early on, we made a commitment to not stop. Wow. And so having someone, a coach, walk you through that will make the process still hard, but so much easier and get you to the other side. So that's so powerful that you mentioned that. And so thank you all for being here. Don't stay stuck. Reach out, book a call. And we do all of this because
you need this.
You deserve this. So let's do this.